Classic Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. John Shannon, the former executive producer, Hockey Night in Canada. His show, 100% Hockey, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays with Darren Millard, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia. You have a take on the suspensions meted out here by George Peros and the Department of Player Safety on Myers and McDavid.
We all thought it was going to be 2. I really do think that most of us said, it'll be 2 games because you don't want Myers, nor do you want McDavid involved in the rematch Thursday night in Edmonton. And I could see that. But at the same time, I'm having a difficult time arguing that 3 isn't the right number as well. When you look at the last 2 suspensions that Peros has given out in 2 separate situations, one to a Nashville player for slew footing, 3 games. To Siplikov, 3 games. Is this the league attempting to create a standard for attempted injury situations? It may be. I don't know that for sure. So it's one of those ones where you say, well, I think it should have been 2, but I can't argue with 3. And in either scenario, I mean, there's, did Tyler Myers and Tyler should be on the People's Court, I think, tomorrow, based on his discussion yesterday about he started in his arms and it worked his way up. He should say, yeah, I hit him in the head. I shouldn't have. And I think for the most part, he said that. Connor got tackled. Listen, Connor got tackled. Connor Garland did exactly what Connor Garland was supposed to do in that circumstance, and the referees didn't call it. Was it a mistake the referees didn't call it? Yeah, it was. It was a mistake they didn't call it. But that doesn't give Connor McDavid the right to hit a guy in the head with a stick. Was he ticked off? He was ticked off. But he does not have the right to hit a guy in the head with a stick. He just doesn't.
And for the 100th time, Connor McDavid, if he gets that call, does it even change the course of history? Because he wouldn't have known the arm was in the air. He still would have reacted, and the puck would have kept on going around on the Oilers' sticks, and time would have expired. I don't think that changes the world at all.
First of all, the Oilers controlled the play, so it would have been a delayed penalty in that. And who knows if Connor would have seen it, Blake, or would an Oiler player have just flipped the puck to a Canuck player to get the whistle and get the penalty? But you don't know that part. But I have a difficult time arguing with what you said too, because of the heat of the moment and the way the play of the game was going was all Oilers at that point.
But also, John, there's 10 seconds left in the game. You're going to give the puck away to get a whistle and go into a face-off circle with JT Miller, who's 80% of the dot that night, and maybe not get the puck back ever again? That would be folly to do that. So
it's a valid point.
And secondly, what happens if McDavid just punches, takes his stick hand over here, punches Connor Garland with his glove on? Do you think he even gets suspended at all?
I don't even think the play stops.
No.
I mean, based on the wrestling we saw and what Garland was doing to McDavid and the way it appears that Chris and Wes were managing the game, play doesn't stop at all.
No. What players don't get about the stick, as soon as you involve your stick, you are asking for trouble. A gloved punch, we've seen in the NHL, referees just giggle and push you away. It's nothing.
Yeah. So in my time at Sportsnet, and I have lots of friends in New York still at the league office. I would go on these tirades on whether it was Hockey Central at noon or even on our regional broadcast about how we have lost control of the stick as a weapon. And there should be more suspensions for sticks being hacked. And one of them was, remember when I think it was Sid got Mark Mathot on the hand and tore a little bit of Mathot's thumb off. We have to be, and we all talk about hits to the head being we have to manage that with concussion protocols. But the stick is such a weapon that we have to have more control over the stick. And I think that perhaps they're trying to do that in order to try to control that aspect. I can guarantee you, as soon as this interview gets put on the air, I'm going to get a text from somebody in the league saying, "See, we're finally listening to you." It's only taken a decade.
I'm glad they're listening to us.
They listen to everything, Matty.
Do they really?
Don't you
Gary,
doubt that.
If that's the case, Gary, it's been a good 30 years. Can you resign and give somebody else an opportunity to run this league? Please.
They may not listen to that.
Asking for global hockey fans.
Come on, we got to get to 36 teams first.
They're big mad in Edmonton. Fans, media, players alike. Is it just pure partisanship and lobbying on behalf of Connor McDavid, or is there anything to Connor getting abused, not getting the fair share of calls, the league not protecting its superstars?
I don't. That's, this goes back to Mario's famous line in the 90s about a garage league, which I think got lost in translation, and he called it a garage league. I do think that what happens in the game of hockey, there are times where it's that old thinking process that everybody's equal. Whether you're a fourth liner or whether you're a sixth defenseman or whether you're a superstar, you're going to get treated the same way. There's no doubt that in other leagues, veteran superstars get calls. There's no doubt. LeBron gets every call he needs. Patrick Mahomes on the weekend. Seriously.
Saturday alone, Patrick Mahomes.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I can see the frustration, but I'm not sure I want a league like that, Matty. I'm not sure I do. The other issue is, and I have done enough Connor McDavid games to know that over the last decade, since Connor came in, no one has fought through checks better than Connor McDavid. No one has fought through checks better than him. And what that does do is that it doesn't look as bad as it is. And that's the human element of how Connor McDavid plays the game. So that when he fights through that check and we say, oh, it should be a penalty, the referee on the ice says, well, he's still going. He's still fine.
Yep,
he's still got the ball. If that's the case, then Connor's, it's a typically Canadian thing. We always make things look so much better, and so we just keep doing the same thing. When he got slew-footed, what was it, 10 days ago, when the penalty wasn't levied on the ice, player safety went and said, you know what, that was a slew foot and you deserve a fine. Suspension? I don't know. That's for player safety to decide the level. But there are times where Connor becomes his own worst enemy because he's so competitive and fights through so many checks.
And John, I'm 100% with you in terms of I don't want a league where if you go near or breathe on a superstar, you're going to get a penalty. The essence of hockey is fighting through, as you say. It's the spontaneous bounces of a frozen rubber disc in a confined space with big men playing it. That's the game, fighting through everything. Now, when there are legitimate penalties, they should be called. Like when he gets hooked on the wrists and stuff like that and impedes his stick handling, that should be called.
Connor Garland should have received a penalty.
Absolutely. As Ferraro said on the broadcast, I mean, that's 3 holding penalties. He absolutely. But there's a difference between what Connor Garland did and what for example, Duncan Keith with Daniel Sedin a number of years ago, where he takes a long run at him with the elbow up and cocked and hits him in the head.
Did he get suspended for that?
I believe so. Connor McDavid was being held. He wasn't being assaulted.
Well,
and I think there's a difference there that is eluding some in the Alberta capital.
Connor Garland did not get a suspension.
Right.
No.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
no, he deserved a penalty.
And while
he
I
may even deserved 2 penalties.
And while I wouldn't agree with it, I would at least understand. Like if Connor Garland two-handed him in the ribs and McDavid responded with that cross-check, I mean, I'd still think that's reckless and you're still, I don't advise it, but I would understand it at the very least.
We
You're
have
being
to
held.
protect the head, boys. We have
Yeah.
to protect the head.
Yeah.
We do. Sure. Bottom line.
For sure.
I mean,
For sure.
That's a baseline, protecting people's heads. And this is 2025, and we're not talking about Hal Lako on Rocket Richard. And for anybody under 30, look it up. We're not. Notice I got Hal Lako in there, the first Canucks head coach.
I think that was anyone under 70, John.
Yeah.
Hold
That's
on
a
now.
good guess.
I'm under 70, and I remember.
I know Rocket, the other guy. Whew.
Well, that was so. What happened? Just for history, this was Hal Lako was the one who hit Rocket Richard, and then Richard turned around and hit Lako and got suspended for the playoffs. Hence the Richard riot.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no. Now that you mention it, the name rings. It has been a while since I. In fact, the last time I encountered the Rocket Richard riots, it might have been in a chapter on Quebec separatism in Poli Sci 101 at Carleton. So it's been a while. Okay, moving on.
Yes.
You have long. We're going to get you in more trouble now.
No, you're not.
You have long been a proponent. You're right. The league doesn't care about this one. You have long been a proponent of do not trade JT Miller.
Yes.
See if you can work it out. Are you resigned to them needing to trade JT Miller now? And what is your analysis of what seems to be a concerted Canucks effort to move JT Miller?
Well, I full confession, I have not talked to anybody in the organization since all the stories came out on the weekend, whether it be Dollywall and Drance or Elliott. I saw JT Miller play an outstanding game Saturday night, and that's the JT Miller I want playing for me. I really do. It's funny. I in the last couple of days, I have talked to a few general managers. And quite frankly, 2 of them said, I am so happy they're having problems in Vancouver because it distracts everybody from every other team in the league that have same issues all the time. So can we please, so from that perspective, can it be managed? I do not know the inner workings of, Brian Bartlett's conversations with Patrick and Jim, whether it's, JT needs to find a new place. I don't believe he's asked for a trade. I don't know whether Pat Brisson has communicated that Elias does not want to be traded. But I just can't. I am shocked to think that 2 grown men can't work it out. I really am.
What we're hearing now though is still we're starting to, even from Bruce Boudreau. I heard him last night on TSN talking about if the media just quieted down, I think that all this would go away and they could get past this. There is only one way that media would quiet down on this, is if both players started to play well. And their inability to play well, John, underscores that this is having an effect on their game. If you want to prove us wrong, go out there, guys, and start getting a point per game. And guess what? Everyone will stop talking about the fissure in the room because it won't matter. If you're winning hockey games and you're scoring, nobody will care that you guys don't get along. But when it seems to affect the on-ice play, that's where people lose their minds. And there seems to be this disconnect from people behind the closed doors that, no, people only care because it's affecting wins and losses. You put wins on the board, no one cares.
Well, the other thing is it went quiet for 2 years. And guess what? They still weren't right. So, no one here was talking about it in a public forum all that often.
Because they were winning.
They still weren't able to come to a functional professional relationship.
I'm not sure Bruce mentioned it last night, but when we had Bruce on the podcast last week, he said, oh, yeah, we had that problem when I was there.
Yeah,
right.
He admitted that the problem existed, but winning solves everything. And let's face it, the game in Winnipeg and the game against LA, all it did was exacerbate it because the team as a whole, not necessarily those 2 guys, although they made mistakes too, The team as a whole, but they were brutal both games. And so you're right. Had they, after that great game in Toronto, had they beaten the Jets, had they beaten the Kings, we would not be having this conversation.
It would not be the temperature it's at. It wouldn't be at the temperature it's at. That's for damn sure.
You're bang on, Blake.
It's in their control, is my point. If either one of them wants to get on a roll and start scoring, it's in their control.
Okay, so your point of view is well noted. And I think we're all shocked that two grown men can work this out better but the reality of the situation is...
By the way, because every day at the Globe, or every day at 1040, and every day that Blake was at TSN, they got along with everybody all the time.
Oh, yeah, all the time. Yeah. We're in the studio, John. In the studio.
Oh, yes. Because my life in television was just milk and honeys every day.
Oh, yeah. Hey, tell us about Bob and Harry. How'd they get along?
Now, Bob and Harry did like each other, for the record.
Ron and Don.
Yeah.
Bob and Harry did like each other.
Do you believe in addition by subtraction on a Miller trade?
It only tell me what the subtraction is. Tell me, or
moving
tell me what
JT Miller out for.
Tell me what the addition is. Rather, tell me what the addition is.
So I'll give you the most recent example, right? Like
Carolina.
The reporting was Filipino, Ryan Lindgren, and a first-round pick. That the Canucks and Rangers were talking about that deal, and it fell apart on Saturday. Now, I think that's a pretty underwhelming return for a first or a second-line center in JT Miller, but given the specific extenuating circumstances at play here, would you do that deal if you're the Canucks? Do you believe in addition by subtraction, try and improve the chemistry and the vibes in the room with JT somewhere else?
Does Pettersson exhale and go on a run?
And whereas you may not be getting the same amount of talent back, perhaps there's something to a sum of the parts theory, and at least give this team an opportunity to go forward and see if there's anything it can do in the spring after resolving the soap opera that even Besser is now saying has, been difficult to get over when they're out there on the ice.
My answer to that is any trade like this has to be assumed that Pettersson will play better. Anything that happens to move Miller out, that has to be one of the assumptions that occurs.
Correct.
So we're getting
and there's no guarantees there, John. You're absolutely you're absolutely 1,000,000% right on that, sir.
So then the other thing and this is just me, trades are very subjective. So to me, you trade a guy like JT Miller. When was the last time a really high level quality guy making about $9 million got traded for three pieces, and that team who got the three pieces won the trade? When was the last time that happened? Okay, the answer is the Winnipeg Jets. When P.L. Dubois got traded to Los Angeles for Kupari, Iafallo, and Velarde. So I think that's the measuring stick for any trade of that ilk. And again, that's my opinion. So that if anybody's sitting there saying, well, the Jets got three parts that could help their team almost right away. Now, it was a summertime trade, so Kevin had a lot more time to manage the situation with Rob Blake and tweak it. But so you have to, those are the things you have to consider. You need three parts that can help your team now, and you have to make the grandiose assumption that Elias Pettersson is going to go back to being a 100-point player.
1,000%.
And the assumption is a funny thing, because you're right. On one hand, you want to be very skeptical based on what we've seen that he can. And yet, John, of course, the previous 4 seasons combined is a much bigger sample size that tells you that he can be a 90-point player with his eyes closed. So, I don't know which instinct to go with.
And let's remember how last season ended for Pettersson.
Yeah, it was not a strong ending. No, his last 12 months of calendar play has not been good. Yeah,
and the interpretation between management and, I hate using this word, and the player, so management and Pettersson, about how injured he was. Can you play through that pain? Boy, I was hurt. That's a relationship I think that needs to be remedied a little bit as well through all of this. So, God, I love I can't cure. Heck, I can't even cure when I walk badly. But I gotta say that I find it so frustrating that you can't sit down with two grown men and point your finger at them and say, "Hey, you guys, fix it, fix this. You are making boatloads of money. This is not as big a problem as the two of you are making it. It's not. Please solve it."
Yep.
And I can't believe Rick Tockett's a strong character. Alvin's got a strong character, and Jimmy. We know Jimmy's got a strong character. For them not to be able to remedy this. Wow.
And you know what, John? With any other personality, I think you're 100% right. With Tocchet and Rutherford there as the leaders, not to mention, Elias seems like a reasonable guy. But I think that's just how big and forceful and unrelenting a personality JT Miller is. Brad Richardson told him years ago, if you ride that Pettersson kid the way I see you riding him, you're going to lose him. And it kept up. He gets benched against Nashville here on Grey Cup Sunday, and something happened. Because 2 days later, Tocchet gets asked, how's your relationship with JT? And he answers, you should ask him. So he is just a personality seemingly that is forever going to be in conflict, and perhaps has to be, that he thrives on conflict to play his best hockey. And I think when that sort of tour de force of personality is in your room long enough, he is going to grate on people, he's going to alienate people, and he is going to get to the point where the leaders in the room, the adults in the room say, we can't have this anymore. He was great for us, but it's time to move on. I think that's where we've arrived here all these years later with JT.
Boy, oh boy, sad. Oh boy.
Sad,
I understand. I understand every word you're saying, but all I had to do was watch the Nashville series last year to know that, they won in 5 games because JT Miller played some of the best hockey.
And John, I think if you could reduce winning a Stanley Cup to 4 playoff series and nobody had to see or work with each other the rest of the calendar year, I would have JT Miller on my team any day.
I'd still have JT
the problem
Miller
is the 82 and the 6 months that precede those 4 best of 7s in 2 months. You have to get through them harmoniously. You have to get through them and into the playoffs, actually. You have to qualify for the playoffs, which they are not right now in a position where they would. So, I think he has all the hallmarks of a marvelous playoff player. I would take him over Pettersson in a 7-game series in a heartbeat. But long term, it's a 26-year-old two-way center against a 32-year-old two-way center.
I think
with personality problems, or at least with a personality that causes problems for others.
Right. I'm glad you rephrased that.
Correct.
And I think the 6-year gap is in the end the deciding point. I think the 6-year gap is the measure of a team saying, okay, how long are we invested with Miller? How long are we going to be invested with Pettersson?
I know you. I know
particularly because, if you're going to keep Miller, you need to win now. And I think they're looking at this season and going, "I don't. This isn't a cup winner."
I know you say you haven't spoken to Jim Rutherford here, but you do know him. Do you think in his personality he's the kind of guy that would be like, we'll take a little less here just to solve the problem, or is he a stickler of this guy is worth this, and that's what I believe?
I think Jim Rutherford will do anything that will help the Vancouver Canucks. I'm not trying to evade the issue, but so if he feels that in any trade that they can get bodies that can help the Canucks win and win now as well as the future, then he'll take the deal.
But the win now,
you see him as a pragmatist, though,
very
right, John?
much so.
Okay.
And by the way,
you've used that word in the past with Jimmy, so I just thought
I do. I also see him very loyal. I see him very loyal to situations, which is why he came out in that first week of December and said, you know what, forget about all this discussion about Miller being traded. I see Jim's loyalty everywhere in his whole life, which is one of the reasons why all the trade discussion has kind of surprised me as quickly as it occurred. But again, there's a difference between that loyalty and being pragmatic about what's best for the Vancouver Canucks.
Do you think this management group, as they sit just out of the playoffs right now, do you think they still think they can win the Stanley Cup this year?
No, but I think they can be a playoff team.
And they think that,
Yeah. I think, listen, this is not the only story of things that have gone wrong in Vancouver this year.
No. It has been a litany.
I just don't want people throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's all I'm saying.
100%. From Demko's injury to Joshua's cancer diagnosis it has been
Ronik's
one hit
injury?
after the.
Come on.
Yeah, it has been one hit after another.
Lots of talent on this team still.
Mm-hmm. Fully agreed. Thank you, Shannon. Great hit.
Well, as long as you guys are getting along with me, I'm okay. If you disagree with me, I'm going to demand a trade.
Well, I need someone to get along with because sure as hell ain't him.
True.
Cheers, boys.